Hello everyone and welcome to another interview on the NARSA podcast. I'm Gary Gillen, your host for today, and I have to say it's been a wee while since we had an interview, so I'm really delighted to be back, so to speak, and to be joined by senior Rangers writer for the Herald and Glasgow Times, Chris Jack. Chris has had an up-close and personal view of Rangers' journey back to the top of Scottish football and is here today to talk about his new book, Going for 55, which is due to be formally published this coming week. Chris, thanks a million for joining NARSA today. How are you doing?
No problem at all, Gary. Thanks for having us on. I'm doing well. It's been an exciting few months. It's been a busy few months, so I'm looking forward to the launch next week. Looking forward to getting the book out there, and hopefully the Rangers fans enjoy what I've done with it, and it proves a nice memento to a very momentous season.
Absolutely. So before we get to the book, I'm very interested to know how someone becomes a senior Rangers writer. Obviously, a bit of a, if you forgive me for saying, a bit of a made-up title, but something befitting of the role that you play, of course, for the publications that you work for. So, can you tell us a wee bit about yourself and your journey, your journalistic journey to get to the senior Rangers writer, please?
The title was not my choosing. The title was given to me rather than chosen by me. But no, my Rangers journey, I feel like, started in the Manchester season, actually 2008. I was coming into my final year at uni, and as part of my final coursework projects, you had to do work experience somewhere. So I had a fortnight on a radio station in Glasgow, Real Radio as it was at the time, and then a fortnight in with the Herald and Evening Times. So the sports editor then was Darryl King. I'm sure the Rangers fans will remember. So I had my fortnight in there, and then said to Darryl, once I've done my exams and passed all my coursework, do you mind if I come back in for some more work experience? So they obviously liked me and liked my writing and thought that I had some form of talent, surprisingly. So they then said, right, that's fine, come back in. So I basically ended up going back in after that, and just staying on work experience for months at a time. Every Friday, said to them, can I come back in on Monday? And thankfully they all just kept saying yes. So basically just perseverance, kept chapping the door, kept turning up every day, and eventually then took me on to the staff there. That would have been about a year or so later, 18 months or so later. Started off doing SPFL stuff for both the Herald and the Evening Times as it was at that stage. So doing your Murrells, Kilmarnocks, Hamiltons, all the key local Evening Times teams. Became their main Partick Thistle writer and covered the Jags for a couple of seasons during their promotion back to the top flight. And then during Mark Warburton's first season, that was the time to really get the role as the Evening Times and Herald's main Rangers writer. So since that first season under Warburton, it's been my job to follow Rangers home away across the continent, European trips, friendlies, all the rest of it. Anything that goes on, it's me that it falls to. So some good times in there, some bad times in there, but thankfully the last couple of months, it's certainly more good ones than bad ones. In the last 3 years, I've been really good to cover, obviously, but that 55 season obviously tops a lot from a personal point of view and a professional point of view.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So onto the book there. It's a relatively new endeavour for you in terms of the concept of the book and the actual production of the book, coming just basically earlier this year, just about 6, maybe 7 months ago. So can you tell us about who originally approached you with the idea? Did you agree right away? How did that process go for you?
It was round about December time. I think, like most Rangers fans, I had a feeling that Rangers could go on and win the title this season, and I've always fancied doing a book and doing something a bit different. I thought, well, if I'm going to do one, this is the season to do one. This is going to be the achievement this season to actually do one on. But I had no idea how to go about it, how to start it, how to pitch it. I then got an email from Peter Burns from Polaris Publishing, who were keen to do a Rangers book, having done a Liverpool title win the previous season. They wanted to do a Rangers one, and they wanted to build on or try and do something around about 55. So Pete came to me, asked me to put a proposal together, which I did. He thankfully liked my writing style. He liked the experience that I had and how I saw the book breaking down. And from there, it actually moved on fairly quickly, and that was easy to put the deal together. probably by the third week or so in January, we had the agreement that I was going to do the book. I had a list of ideas for chapters, a list of interviews that I wanted to go for. And thankfully, by that stage, we'd obviously won the Old Firm game, come through a tricky January, and I was even more confident that we were going to win the league. So it was a bit of a no-brainer at that stage, just to charge on full steam ahead and let's just go for it. And the number of people that I spoke to earlier on saying, "Oh, you can't do a book; it's too early," and I'll speak to you in a few weeks, and you can't do it just now. And I'm like, well, that'd be great, but I don't have the time to wait. I've got a lot of work to go through here over a short space of time. So thankfully, people spoke to me on the proviso. Look, if Rangers make a monumental mess of this, not a word will ever see the light of day. But thankfully, it all worked out well in the end.
That's a really good point, because you're probably interviewing people, on the proviso that it's going to work out the way that it did. And of course, it worked out a lot earlier, back in March for us to do that. So that probably provided a wee bit of respite. But was there anyone who actually refused to talk about it until it was actually done?
I don't think so in the end. I think I managed to convince almost everybody to say, look, it's going to be okay. One, because I was that confident we were going to win the league, and two, they also had my word that if it doesn't go to plan, nothing's going to go out. So there was nobody that said, "Oh, come back to me after they've won it." There was guys, when I was doing the plan for it, there were certain people I wanted to also speak about certain factors and have early chapters on, like I said, Dave King and John Gilligan. I got a lot of their stuff for the earlier chapters, and then wanted Paul Murray to do a more reflective type bit on once the title was actually won and what the day felt like for him. So there was ones that I naturally got after the title was won, and they were also easier ones. But no, most of the conversations were fairly straightforward, thankfully.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So onto the book again, or the actual content of the book. So you picked the real start of the journey in the book to be when Dave King, Paul Murray, and John Gilligan took control of the club back in March 2015. But of course, the road to 55 had started long before that, culminating in the events of February 2012. Like, why did you decide to start from 2015 rather than a lot earlier, when the building blocks were kind of crumbling around us to get us to that point in the first place?
I think I went for AGM time, because I think from that moment it became a case of when Rangers would win the league, not if Rangers would win the league. Now, during the barren years under White and then Green and Easdale and Ashley, I think a lot of fans feared, like, will we ever actually get back to the stage of being able to compete? Is the new normal for Rangers being a big club but never been able to actually win anything? Once Dave and John and Paul came in, yes, we didn't know how long it would take. We didn't realise that we'd go through some of the lows that we had to go through to get to 55. I think from that point, it became clear that with the financial backing they were going to put in, the way the club was going to be basically rebuilt from the ground up, plus the fans re-engaging in such a remarkable way, having stuck by the club in such a remarkable way, I think it became obvious from March 2015, Rangers will be champions. It's just a case of when. So I was keen to kind of plot the first couple of years, or the 2015 up until Stephen Gerrard's appointment, and can go through the downs of Warburton, the downs of Kushinia, the downs of Murty, and really paint a picture of where Rangers were when Stephen came in. And then the second chapter is how Stephen basically picked Rangers up from nothing and from what it was to get to the place where, come August last year, he felt we can actually go and win this title. And then the chapters after that are kind of month by month going through of how the season unfolded. But I was keen not to do a series of match reports. I didn't want just to have 38, 40, whatever it is, match reports. I've written them already, and everybody's read them already. So I had to try and pick different features and different things for each chapter. So there is a bit of run of play in it, and you obviously know who scored the goals and how the games were won. But I wanted to get a bit more in depth into various aspects of the story, and pick different chapters with various themes to try and make it a bit more interesting and try and give it a bit more emotion, a bit more depth as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a brilliant concept as well, and that's what I thought when I was reading through, because in the moment, in terms of just being a regular fan, I can't say that I enjoyed a whole bunch of the game, and just purely through nerves being shattered after previous challenges from seasons gone past, and not just the two that Stephen had been at the helm. So the ability to be able just to go back and reflect and remember and go, actually that was the way that we felt. That was, it felt like a turning point. That was another bit of progress to build on to where we were going, which was different from previous years. It was good to just do that in the cold light of day, and instead of just in the moment when it's less than pleasurable, I have to say. So yeah, that really angle. I have to admit. So with the benefit of hindsight, and I think you just alluded to it a wee bit there, Chris, it's very obvious to see that the journey back, even from AGM time, which was a real good, feel-good time for fans of the club and for the folks that probably worked at the club as well, I'm fairly sure. But it's fairly obvious to see that the journey back, since 2015 has been anything but a straight line, and that is chronicled through the book, of course. And I guess in hindsight, not to sound smart after the fact, but I guess it was kind of not very realistic to think that it was ever going to be anything but a wavy line to get us towards the pinnacle and the holy grail of the Premiership title again. So during your research and writing of this book, and again it's through a fairly condensed period, did it give you an opportunity to personally reflect when you're interviewing the key characters in the play, so to speak? Like, was there things that you learned for the first time? I'm sure that there has to have been. And was there things that you kind of relearned, having forgotten about them originally, as you go through and think, oh geez, that's right, I remember that. I kind of cast that to the back of my mind.
I think, to answer the first one, I think it was actually speaking to John Gilligan about the state of Ibrox when the three guys actually first went in, because I think we all have this idea of Ibrox as being this almost like palatial stadium, and it's the marble staircase and it's the wooden walls and the seats are pristine and everything is just as it should be. And that was something during, if you cast my mind back to that time, you were going around Ibrox thinking, actually, that door's been burst for a couple of weeks, it's not been fixed, and there's paint that's peeling off there, and that's not been done for a couple of years, and there's wallpaper there, and it was the state of disrepair and dilapidation, as John called it. And they were also going into areas that the press and that don't always get into, so they were really seeing behind the scenes. And John really emphasised how big a shock it was for him just what state Ibrox had been allowed to get into, and up at the training ground at Auchenhowie as well, because the fans also see the team in the park, and that gives you an idea of where the club is. But I don't think the fans even now might not really get where the club was just from a day-to-day running operation, not even just from a financial point of view. I think I made one of the points in the December chapter talking about the finances. When King first came in, the turnover was something like 15 or 16 million pounds, and now 6-7 years later it's now over 60 million pounds. So that obviously takes a degree of investment and a degree of business acumen to get to that level. But it's not just investment in the football team, it's investment actually just bringing Ibrox and bringing the club and its operations back up to a level that Rangers fans and Rangers people would expect of the club. So that was one of the things that John actually, when he was talking about the kind of dilapidation of it, that really kind of hit home of just how bad. Even now, I don't think people will really get just the state of Rangers during those early days of the new regime, and just the monumental amount of work that had to be done on the park, off the park, staffing levels, morale levels. And I know that we always think, oh, Rangers should have won the title before they did, and they should have done. But I think to get from where they were to champions in the time frame they actually did do it, and it's still a hugely remarkable achievement.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, and that's what I was meaning. With the more or the less straight of a line, it just wasn't quite as simple as we were all, I guess, in hindsight, hoping it would be, rather than actually expecting it to be as well. And the general fan who just wants to put on the TV, shout at the TV for a couple of hours, and then go on with the rest of their day. Probably wouldn't pay much mind to the fact of the fundamental breakages that were through every facet of the club as well, and to try and fix that at the same time as fixing the product that basically is the end game, which is the men's first team and product on the pitch. I can't imagine where they would even start with that. So yeah, I completely agree that hindsight would probably dictate the fact that the timeline has probably exceeded expectations as well, more than we would ever even. Yeah, Yeah. So during it, you also you interviewed a whole host of people from Liverpool fans groups, you know, Willie Vass, the photographer, the security folks, you know, just to get a feel and flavour for how things were built and how they started to get a real genuine understanding that this is actually going in the right direction. It's all really fascinating. And you also interviewed some fan media bigwigs, and my good friend David Edgar and Stevie Clifford from Heart and Hand and the Four Lads Had a Dream, respectively, from their fan perspective as we weaved through the journey. So, quick question on the fan media stuff. At the time, had you lost my number? Did my phone not work? Trying to contact me?
I tried and you just never get back to me.
So is that right? So
Does not see all the season missed calls from my Scottish phone number.
you know, I just normally block them. Usually somebody wanting something, and I guess that's the case in this occasion as well. But no, no, seriously, you know, with the evolution and the popularity of fan media during this time, which I'm sure has to be directly connected to the situation the club were in at the time, and to particular sections of the mainstream media's behaviour towards Rangers at the time as well, taking kick after kick after kick when we were down. Like, what's your general thoughts on the evolution of fan media and how it's impacted your particular industry?
I know there's perhaps a lot of guys in my business and my line of work that have a real downer, if you like, on fan media. I don't. I do understand it, and I like it as a concept. I think there's, as I said, nothing stays the same forever. The media is evolving and changing all the time. I do think there's a place for it. I also think there's a balance to be struck. I know, I said, different clubs will have different ways of how they want to handle fan media and traditional media and how they want to engage. I think there is a definite balance to be struck. It doesn't have to be an either or. It doesn't have to be you're fully mainstream media, as the common phrase is, or fan media. There is a way that you can serve both purposes. I think clubs, and I put Rangers in this as well, are still searching for that balance. I don't think Rangers have that balance right just yet. I think as things develop, hopefully it will come where, if we do find ourselves in a world where fan media can have their access, and some of the Rangers fan media content is great, but there will always be a place, I think, and I'm also going to say this as a newspaper man, there will always be a place for the type of work that we do and the type of comment and insight and analysis that we do. So I'm probably not going to shock you by defending the integrity and defending the good name of the Scottish press. I know with some Rangers fans that's maybe a tricky subject at times, but there are guys that want to deal with Rangers properly and professionally and cover the club in the best way possible, and they are more than capable of coexisting alongside your fan media guys. Also, Heart and Hand has become a great success. I worked alongside Stevie from Four Lads doing a lot of great work in charity nights and podcasts and stuff over the years, and there is that balance. I hope that over the coming seasons that balance is struck, because the fan media isn't going away. Traditional media has been here for a long time and isn't going away, despite what people say about it. And there is a way for both things to really kind of cohabit. And at the end of the day, the more content that's put out about Rangers, the better. Rangers fans just want to read and to listen and to watch and to be engaged in their club. And if traditional media can serve up their side of it and fan media can put forward their side of it, as long as Rangers fans enjoy the content that's put out, that's all they're going to be concerned about at the end of the day. So no, there's definitely been a change over the last few years. I don't think it's quite settled down yet and quite kind of settled into a rhythm of this is how it could progress for a few years. But no, hopefully that moment and that time is coming.
Yeah, excellent. So in terms of the actual enjoyment factor of 55, you have a job to do to cover it, to bring it to the likes of myself and the general public. And did you, and then of course add into this, from not even halfway through, the burden, if I could say, of what has to happen from a book perspective and looking at that particular angle. Did you even get an opportunity to truly enjoy 55?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I think, I know I've seen a lot of interviews from the manager and the players over the last wee while talking about they obviously know what they've achieved and understand the history of it, but it might be at one point during this season, or it might be when they leave Rangers or they retire, that they'll actually look back and say that that was 55. That was just something truly unique for the football club and for us to achieve. There's almost a sense of that for me. I just think I was that busy during it. Even the day when they won the league, or the weekend they won the league, was at Ibrox at Birmingham and was outside covering the scenes outside the party and all the rest of it. And it was nice to be there. It was great to be there, but I still don't know if I really kind of took it in and really savoured it as I would have done if I was just one of those fans who didn't then have a job to go and do. Always the professionalism side always kind of kicked in, and the professional side in my head always outweighed the personal side of it. So yes, I enjoyed it and it was great, but I'm still not convinced I actually really savoured it as much. And that was one of the reasons for actually doing the book, because in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, I now have something that I can look back and say, yes, that was that season. That was the season of COVID. It was a season of getting to the last 16 in Europe, of losing in the cups when we shouldn't have done. But it was the season that we won title 55, and that's what 55 actually meant. So as much as I enjoyed it at the time, and it was also a great season to cover, I have thought a few times, did I actually make the most of it, and did I enjoy it as much as I could have done or should have done? And I don't think I did. I think it will be some point during the future when I'm actually may just be sitting in the house myself,
Yeah,
and I will catch a glimpse of the book and think, no, that's actually quite good. That's a moment. That's an achievement to be proud of.
Yeah, in a magic time, definitely. So just to break things up a wee bit, just from the book for a second, I'm going to do a quick fire round that I do with any of the interviews that we have here over at NARSA, and I'm sure you've listened to every single one in preparation for this interview as well today, Chris, so you'll be expecting this. So quick fire, first thing that comes to your mind, what was the last text you sent?
To you, saying that it was okay for you to be 5 minutes late.
Okay, yeah, good man. Who is your most favourite ever non-Rangers player, a player who has never managed to put on the light blue of Rangers?
Frank Lampard.
Oh, nice. The Stones or the Beatles?
Beatles.
Yes, good man. What famous person have you met that you wish you hadn't?
Oh. Gosh, I think most of the famous people I've met have been very good. Can we come back to that one?
Yeah, definitely. We're going to come back quick because this next one's the last one. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
Best piece of advice. Probably from a work perspective is just always hit the word count, always hit the deadline, don't make a mess of it. And that stood in good stead for the book as well, thankfully.
I'll bet it did. Yeah, I'll bet. So, famous person you've met that you wish you hadn't?
I don't want to say them as a bit of a cop-out. I can't actually think of them, because football-wise they've all been good, and certainly Rangers-wise they've all been good.
Yeah.
Can I say Pedro Caixinha, because I wish he was never the Rangers manager?
Absolutely, you can. You and me both. I'll tell you that.
Just for what he put us through for 6 months. As a guy, I didn't actually mind him, but the fact that he was there in the first place was just preposterous. So, I'll apologise to Pedro at the same time as I slaughter him.
Yeah. You would like to think he's sitting wherever he is now, saying, "Yeah, that wasn't a good fit. That wasn't for me." And I hope that the Aussie over in the east end of the city is saying the same in about 3 or 4 months' time.
Time will tell.
Exactly. So, just from a wrap-up perspective here, Chris, what would you want readers to take away from the book after they've finished it?
I think I want them to take away and to really tap into their own memories of 55 and what it meant. I hope I've managed to convey what it meant for the club and what it meant for the people involved at first team level, and what it meant for various people associated throughout the whole story. But I think the title win and that season, it'll mean different things to different people. One of the chapters in it is the Absent Friends chapter, and remembering fans that saw Rangers fall, saw Rangers start off on the road to recovery, But then unfortunately, I went around to see the end of it and get to experience that next title win. And there will be people that have stories like that, whether you worked at the club and you lost your job through no fault of your own, whether it's your dad or your mum or whoever you went to the games with that sadly passed away and didn't get to see it. I think 55 and that title win, it's an emotional and emotive thing for people individually. So if I can help them reconnect with the club and reconnect with those memories and really kind of focus in on what it means for them, I think that would be the best thing. As I say right at the very start of the book, it's not just a sporting story. It's not a case of Rangers win most of the 38 games and at the end of it they get something to celebrate and they get a bit of silverware. It's not. It's more than that. And if I hope I'll be able to, one, convey that, but two, allow people to actually tap into their Rangers journey and their Rangers story.
Yeah, and the fact that it is genuinely a journey for everyone, regardless of what their story is. Yeah, perfect. So at the very end of the book, not to spoil the end, if anybody hasn't read it yet, when you're listening to this interview, just shut your ears down for a second. But
are you going to spoil it and tell people that Rangers win the league?
I am. Exactly. 55 is ours. You say the past will never be forgotten, but it is time to look forward. This title may never be surpassed, but it will certainly be added to by Scotland's most successful club. Rangers welcome the chase. Rangers are ready. Rangers are going for 56. What a battle cry of Mel Gibson proportion to end that book. A tremendous end. But what do you see as being, if you could have a crystal ball and predict the future, what do you see as being the immediate future of the club in this coming season?
I think what the 3 years under Steven Gerrard has given Rangers and what this title win has given Rangers as a platform, it's given them a solid foundation and it's given them almost a line in the sand. So yes, the last 10 years have been tricky for us. There've been hard times in there. But everything was built to 55. Everything now 55 related can be parked to an extent. Something the manager mentioned last week. It's history. It'll never be forgotten. But at some stage, the narrative and the words have to change. 55 has to be parked, and we have to move on. And you look at where the club are in terms of the management team that's there, the squad that's there, the infrastructure that's there, the improvements that have been made at Ibrox and Auchenhowie. Rangers are now back to being Scotland's pre-eminent club, and they can now go on and become Scotland's dominant club once again because they have that foundation there. This title win shouldn't be a flash in the pan. It shouldn't be a one-season wonder because it wasn't that to get to this point. It was built up over 3 years, and there's no reason why Rangers now can't, yes, use this as inspiration and use this as something to always cherish, but it's something to build on. They've given themselves a real platform now to go into the Champions League, hopefully to go and do even better in Europe, to go and try and win cups, to improve the squad, to then really harness that fact of bringing players in, developing them, selling them, giving themselves even more financial sounding, and that's what I think the title win does for them. If they hadn't got it this season, this coming season coming up, it would have been the same thing. It would all have been a building process and remembering where we have been and remembering the last 11 years rather than 10. We can now remember that. We can celebrate it, cherish it, but it doesn't have to dominate life anymore. 56 and 56 becomes 57 and 58 over the next few years, hopefully, and that's the position that Rangers now have themselves in, thankfully.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. I love it. I do. Chris, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on the show today. I've thoroughly enjoyed the chat and really look forward to reading the book in hard copy when it gets published here on Monday. So take care. All the very, very best for the book launch this week. And thanks again.
Thanks so much for having us on, Gary, and thanks very much to everybody at NARSA. Their support has been great over the years for everything that I've done work-wise and book-wise. So hopefully all the guys enjoy it, savour it, cherish it, and there might even be a going for 56 this time next year, hopefully.
Good man. I hope so too.